My first exposure to pornography came as a complete surprise. I was 10 years old. It was a few months after my mother died. And I rounded the corner in the local grocery store to see a Playboy magazine in a magazine rack. And that image just arrested me. I never even opened the magazine, but was just mesmerized by it. I was a sitting duck for porn. Later on that night, I slipped out of the house and ran back down to the store as fast as I could, just to stand and look at that magazine for another 5 minutes. I suffered huge bouts of conscience. And 2 or 3 times a year, I would ditch the stash, maybe burn it ceremoniously. I would make a private confession at a revival service or a youth camp. In college, although it was still secret, because I was, after all, the president of the campus Christian Fellowship, I decided to stop torturing myself. That I rationalized my porn use, decided that it was, that guilt was just the residue of an overly puritanical upbringing, and I really needed to get comfortable with my sexuality, and I needed sex education. What better place to get it, I thought, than porn? Completely unaware. I'm telling myself that porn is preparation for marriage, not knowing that porn is actually poisoning my marriage, creating expectations for marriage that no woman on the planet would ever be able to fulfill. I went on a seminary-sponsored trip to New York City with my wife, on a trip co-sponsored by the seminary and a group called Women Against Pornography. The purpose of the trip was to show us how women are exploited by the sex business. And so we were led on a tour through Times Square in New York City. And I sat in a peep show booth with my wife. She put the quarter in, and I got my first look at a moving image. This was in right around 1980. There wasn't even sound. But in that moment, I was, in one way, repulsed by what I saw. My wife certainly was. And yet, there was a deep fascination, something I couldn't put words to, but something that I felt. It hooked me very deeply. And so it wasn't too many days after that I found myself slipping away from seminary and from home, driving down into the seedier parts of Trenton, New Jersey in search of a source for my new drug, because baby, I had found my drug. I'm told that 4 out of 5 guys who seek help for sexually compulsive behavior only do so after receiving an ultimatum from a wife or a girlfriend. I'm one of the 4. It was in a desperate bid to salvage my marriage that I did something I'd never done before and actually went for help. Mine was not a voluntary disclosure. We had moved from South Florida to Tennessee. I was doing what the alcoholics would call the geographic cure. And for a while it seemed to work. So we were in a new place, we joined a new church, it was a new start, and things were going well until we started running out of money. I'd also made a career change, trying to make a career change. We ran out of money, and those stresses, I started to get afraid. And when that happened, I reached for the only fear medication that I'd ever used. So late one night after Allie had fallen asleep, I slipped out of bed and went back to the office and fired up the computer and started downloading porn. Time disappeared, as it does whenever we're in a dissociated state, which is really what that is. So I don't know how long I was there, but it's just at some point I looked up and my wife was standing there. I hadn't even heard her come in. And that was just a heart-stopping, dreadful moment. She didn't say anything. She turned, went back into the bedroom. I shut everything down and followed her. That was a very, very, very long night. It was kind of the worst day and the best day when my wife caught me. It felt like the end of the world. I was quite certain it was the end of my marriage. If I was going to have one chance to salvage the only friendship I had, I was going to have to do something I'd never done before, which was get help, tell somebody. That felt like dying. Telling the truth about my life to other people felt like dying. What helped, what made it possible, was that those people told their stories first. And I saw that I was in the company of other people, but they had something I didn't have. They had an element of freedom. They had hope. I was terrified. Here's what I thought. I thought, if people find out what I've really done, if I ever say this, I'll lose all my friends. Of course, I didn't have close friends. I just had a ton of admirers, right? I'll lose all my friends. I'll lose my standing. I'll lose my wife. People will pull their children away from me. It will be career suicide. It'll be personal and social suicide. Here's what I found. I told my story, and people did run. They ran at me because my story is not nearly as unique as I thought it was. It's a very, very, very common story. I'd always had a personal relationship with Jesus since I was very small, but I had made the mistake of thinking that my personal relationship was a private one. And so I spent years begging God for a private solution to my private problem. I am a colossal failure as a solo disciple for the very simple reason that Jesus doesn't have any solo disciples. That's not his program. Thankfully, today I have a freedom when it comes to porn, but I'm well aware that it's a fragile freedom. It's something that I protect with the help of boundaries and brothers and accountability, covenant eyes. It's something that I keep by giving away. It's hard to imagine that our marriage today could be, better than it is, that we could be closer than we are. That redemption is it's miraculous, and I'm so grateful for it. When I tell my story to another guy, even if his problem isn't sexual, here's what I found. Every guy's got something in his life that's bigger than he is. And once I tell him mine, very often I'm now the safest guy he knows. And now he has an opportunity to offload this thing that he's been carrying all by himself and get a little assistance in this battle that he's been losing for so long. It's like getting let out of prison. It really is.